Last year, in January 2023, I lost a friend to suicide. He was back in Manchester. For those who don't know me, I'm living in Australia now, and I went back for 6 weeks, and we said we were going to meet up. And we didn't. It wasn't a good space. He said that. But I wanted to hold space for him, and I didn't push the meet up. And when I arrived back in Australia, within days, I'd seen and heard of other people online that had committed suicide. I'd never experienced losing a friend to suicide before. We weren't that close, but we used to meet up every time I would go home. Before I moved here, he cut my hair every 2 or 3 weeks. So, I did see him quite frequently. But I regret not having the meetup. I regret not pushing it. And a part of me feels I could have made a difference, right? I suppose it's normal to think that now, but I wish I'd done it. I still probably don't know what I think about it or what I feel about it when I think about it. But he was a great guy and he meant well in the world. Anyway, my today's guest is Paul Elderkin, and he talks about losing a loved one to suicide. His journey is absolutely incredible. From what he's been through and how he's leading his own way now is just remarkable. I'm so inspired by this guy. The turning point is just absolutely incredible. I'll let Paul go into it a little bit more, but some of the work that he's doing with Expansive Breath, Integration Lab, where he provides spaces for healing and meditation and movement sessions, is powerful for everybody that he's doing it with and for, and for himself. It's just a great journey that he's leading, and I feel you all will get something from this interview as I did, and you'll see how he made me think differently. I have a little moment where he just touched my heart, and I shared something that I'll never forget that he did to me. It's just, absolutely incredible. So I look forward to you sitting through this chat with Paul and I. It's just remarkable. On another note, my friend Andrew Borger from episode 3, his book arrived, and we discussed it in that episode, and I wanted to share that it arrived. So I have 2 of my guests' books here on my shelves next to my book. Patrick will be in many, many weeks. He will appear on Low, but that's one is Andrew's book, Victim. I can't wait for you to get a copy. But for now, we'll be back in 21 seconds. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Mr. Paul Elderkin, welcome to Leading Our Own Way. How are you today, mate?
Mr. Andrew White, thank you for having me.
No.
I'm doing good today. It feels a bit surreal that we'll get into this a bit throughout the podcast, I'm sure, but being on your podcast, which you're launching, and going all the way back to how we first met back in the UK, and now we're both over in Australia, it's quite a surreal moment for me.
Oh, well, mate, I appreciate it, but the honour's all mine because I've been really looking forward to this chat. We've always had some really deep chats, and you're one of the deepest people I know, and I absolutely adore our conversations, and I've learned a lot from how you talk. I do feel it's gonna be. I'm a talker, and I'm known for being a talker, but I feel like you're gonna do most of watch it, you. But I feel like you're going to do most of the talking on this podcast, and I'm just going to listen. I'm going to learn. But I just know people are going to going to just fall in love with you and this story and your personal journey. But I don't want to spoil it. How are you, and what are you up to today, Paul? What are you doing in your life right now?
I'm in a bit of a transitional period, which is really exciting. Um, and it's something I've been building towards.
Mm,
I guess the seed was planted 7 years ago, but after we get into this talk a bit later, and what something that happened 4 years ago,
mm,
really made that seed just blow open, and I've had these dreams of just kind of packing in the corporate world and transitioning into um, a different line of work and
mm,
doing that remotely overseas. So I'm in a very exciting period of my life,
mm.
from a career perspective, from a mental and emotional perspective, and I'm really looking forward to what's ahead, and seeing where I land and really following my heart in the next steps of my journey.
Yeah, nice. And well, well, I tell you what. Before we get into that, then I think it's probably a little bit important, I suppose, because not everyone I'm interviewing I have a relationship with, but briefly for the viewers, because they kind of know the format of this now, after watching the previous episodes. We're gonna touch base on. I know you've just briefly gone into it. Oh no, sorry, I do need to go into how we met first. Probably we met briefly in the UK, probably without realizing it, on the basketball court. You were up not in the northeast of England.
I thought you
Do
were
you
going to say we were up 60 points in the game because we probably were.
and so I was playing out at Manchester. That's who we probably would have come across. I did play for another club, but I'm guessing it probably was through Manchester. And can you tell everybody where you were playing in the UK?
Yeah, so I was playing up in Durham, so northeast of England, um, and yeah, I'd played in Durham for most of my career,
Hmm.
um, and quite an interesting basketball journey.
Hmm.
Starting off in the amateur levels, doing the National League rounds, starting in National League Division Three, working our way up to, Division Two, Division One, and then finally going to professional league, so the British Basketball League,
Hmm.
with Durham Wildcats. Um, and it would have been throughout that journey where we would have crossed paths probably a few times maybe in different capacities as well.
Mm, yeah. And we only realised that when I was the assistant coach at one of the clubs here and you stepped onto the court against our club. That
Yeah,
one we did win. I know that.
yeah,
Because we made it to the state finals that year. We lost, but we made it to the state. I'm sure we beat you that game. But somebody actually introduced, and so actually one of my guys said, "Oh, there's an English bloke on the court. We've got to watch out for this guy." So I was like, "Okay." And obviously we did brief. Like I think me being me came up to you and said, "Hey, I'm from Manchester." I got really excited, and we touched base, and we kind of lost touch over the years. Well, not lost touch, but I think we just kind of went in our own directions, typical Facebook friends, and then you move locally to where I am now. You've since moved, but we connected and we learnt more about our personal journeys since then. I know we'll probably touch on that later in the episode, but we touched base on our personal journeys and we shared, and it was great. We were vulnerable, and this is why I think we connect outside of basketball now, isn't it? The way the way we talk and the way we share and the way we hold space for one another.
yeah, absolutely. I recall the phone call that we had,
Me too.
um, when I just moved down to Torquay, which is a place an hour away from Melbourne.
Hmm.
Um, and you'd said, "Hey, there's actually a local basketball league in the area."
Hmm.
And I remember being on the phone to you for probably like an hour, and we were catching up. We were sharing lots of different things, but I think I said something along the lines to you of like, even playing locally and for fun for me still has so much attachment of this professionalism and this expectation that you have to perform. And
Mm.
it gave me like so much anxiety, even just to come and play down on I think it was a Monday night,
Yeah.
with a bunch of guys and have some fun. And somewhere for me was still this wiring of you have to perform. And I think I expressed to you how anxious and almost debilitating it made it for me just to step onto the basketball court to have a laugh.
Yeah. Maybe I didn't realize that at the time. I remember you sharing, but maybe I didn't understand the depth of it. But you came and I felt like you conquered in not even just a performance way, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel you enjoyed being on the floor again. You gave insights to the guys; they really admired you and respected you. And when they heard you were potentially leaving, they was like, "Get this guy, keep him down here." And even my team in Melbourne was like, "Get this guy down." I was like, "I can't make him play basketball."
Yeah.
But so okay. Well, on that note, then, how was it on the court for you? Because I know there's challenges in your early basketball career, and we'll start with that very shortly. But in the modern day, how was that coming playing? Did it flood back, or did you move it to the side and was okay with it? Where were you at?
It was always this apprehension of before, I would leave the home and go to the facility where we were playing,
Mm.
this apprehension where just nerves kicked in.
Yeah.
And logically, I could always tell myself, there's nothing to be nervous about. Like, you're
Mm.
just going to have some fun.
Mm.
But, throughout my journey, I've started to really understand where that deeper wiring is,
Yeah.
Um, and you do something for a long enough time, and so many different things will influence an individual in a different way. um and it took time coming to Monday Night Basketball, but gradually over time, just through working through it and using some practices, that helped me kind of calm myself down. I was able to come and enjoy, and I think it was my last game when I knew it was my last game down there, connecting with all the guys. Um, and I remember feeling the fun part of it came through again.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful memory. I actually haven't played basketball again since then because it was such a beautiful memory for me to kind of finish on at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that aside, with anything that you might feel that you those anxieties leading up to the game, it was a pleasure to be on the court with you again, and we really enjoyed playing with you. But that's a true lesson to understand as well. You don't really know what's going on in someone's brain or journey of life, even if it's something fun and as passionate as the game of basketball, right? And yeah, well, that's a good note, maybe. Because I know this is going to be quite a journey, and I know it's going to get where it's going to get to, and I know people are going to sink into it, and I think we will too. So let's go back to where it began for you. You've been on a journey of diving deep into your childhood. Where did it start for you then?
I mean, the journey into my childhood started really 4 years ago.
Okay.
Um, Before that, I wasn't aware of, or maybe the influences of how earlier life experiences impacted me weren't as intense until I went through this traumatic event
Yeah.
in December 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But, growing up, I was an extremely privileged person in what I had around me. I have beautiful parents who have such a beautiful, loving relationship, and it was such a great example for me and my siblings growing up to be exposed to that. Both my parents were very driven and dedicated to not only their family but to their individual careers, and really supported the growth of their individual careers. And I think that's for me, that's been such an important lesson. Um, and it's a challenging topic to jump straight back into the childhood, without maybe giving the context of why I end up going on this deep dive into my earlier life and pre-existing life up until December 2019.
I feel that's probably a good place to start then, if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
So I mean, we've spoken about this, a lot as
Hmm.
friends, and the impacts this has drastically had on my life, and I found it incredibly complex. Which,
Hmm.
in moments like this, when I'm able to sit here and talk about it, makes me feel a lot of gratitude, which
Hmm.
I'm feeling right now in being able to maybe just share this story to anyone who can connect to it in their own way.
Hmm.
I think that's a big thing about trauma is being able to share, um, being able to connect over what we've been through as throughout our lives. So in December in 2019, I was in a relationship with a woman at the time, and it was quite a challenging relationship. Um, but at the time in my life, I just felt like, that was normal for me. That was actually what felt safe to me, and I'll explore that a bit more as I get into my childhood.
Hmm.
Um, but in December 2019, I lost my partner to suicide, and also found her to suicide, and it was an incredibly dark and painful and heartbreaking experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I knew what was coming, so I was always already starting to get upset. Um, um, Talk to us about that day. Talk to us about how your day started. Paint the picture to your day at work, and why you went round that day to see your partner.
So at that point in my life, it was, an ordinary day. I woke up. It was a Monday morning, and I just got myself ready for work, and I went into work. This is, when we were in the times of you going into the city every day for work.
Hmm.
I'm a project manager, um, and working for a relatively big corporation here in Australia. Um, and it was just a normal day to begin with. I got up, jumped on the train, and in those days the trains were packed, and you're just so used to it,
The grind of the day, right?
the grind of the day. And I
Mm.
think we can have a completely different appreciation for that now
Yeah.
after having the influence of COVID in our lives.
Mm.
um but I remember I got into work, and something just felt so off. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, or anyone listening has had that experience where something just feels completely off. Like you just have this intuition that something has happened.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, that intuition I had was I was very afraid for what at that time could have happened to my partner's life.
Did you suspect that?
Again, from a more cognitive standpoint, I don't think it was fully on my radar,
Mm.
but something much deeper down had sensed it.
Hmm.
Because leading up to it, I had a few times where I kind of rushed to the apartment because something felt unsafe or something.
Hmm.
Um, and I just doing this on this Monday morning, started my work day. I was just sat down at my desk, and I almost literally stood back up and packed my bag up. And I remember just being in such a hurry. Like I was in a hurry to really, really get somewhere. Like I had somewhere to be, but I didn't know what was going to be there waiting for me.
Yeah.
And the people sat around me obviously were taking note, and I was dropping things on the floor, trying to put in my bag, and I was just a bit like panicked. I was so panicked. Um, and I just almost immediately left the office, and I'm just like getting to this train station as quickly as I possibly could. And I remember like walking across the road just outside Flinders Street in Melbourne, which is a huge train station. And this like police car is just like coming, and I'm like walking, and I'm like, at the time, I was like, is this a sign? And then obviously after everything unfolded, I was like, that was a sign, potentially for someone to, I mean, I guess maybe have been there for that, experience of what I was, experiencing that day. Um, so I'm on the train and I'm just kind of out of bodying, just like I'm just knowing that something is coming and calling the manager, being like, I've had to go, like something's up. I've had to go home. Um, and I got back to my apartment and I was like, I jumped straight on my bike because like public transport wasn't convenient, or the quickest way to get to my partner's apartment. I'm just cycling down there as quickly as possible, and I'm just like, something's just telling me, it's like, I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I got to the apartment, and I don't want to talk too much about the experience of what was inside the apartment, out of respect. Out of respect for all of the people, all of the loved ones who are also, impacted by this experience. Um, it was a very, very challenging experience, extremely traumatic to the point where I was in shock, and I was in shock for, I would honestly say, for years afterwards. My brain just locked, and it was like, you don't know how to process this information, so it just locked it up, and it, played its role in trying to keep me safe. But of course, that whole experience was not just a cognitive experience; it was a somatic experience. Um,
So how how did how did the following days to that? Can you talk a little briefly about the raw emotions from how you? I don't think anyone really talks about this part, but how was those following first few days for you?
they were numb.
Mm.
Um, it was like, after the experience, I vacated the apartment and waited for the police to arrive,
Mm-hmm.
and that's scary. Like, it's an incredibly scary part of the experience that I was not equipped to deal with
Yeah.
from on any level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're in this state of shock, and you're devastated, and your heart's just being ripped out from you, and you got to go through the formalities, and that's where it began. Post, not really going into the experience itself, but post that experience was the formalities of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um and I was in the apartment, ground floor reception, just for a couple of hours with the police and waiting. Everything was going on, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I could be alone. um so I had my best friend, um who came and met me down there. And when we were okay to leave, we just we walked home together, and it felt like there's no way to explain it apart from I couldn't feel anything on that walk home. One of the things that stuck out to me so vividly, and something that is stuck with me today into this transition of what I'm going into next, was I said something along the words of, this experience will not define me in a positive in a negative way, I will find the hope, the purpose, in the love in this experience to be able to share it in my own life, therefore share it in other lives.
How long after did you think that? Sorry.
That was a couple of hours after on the walk home with my friend. There was something just so much deeper down inside of me that I just wanted to be resilient almost straight away.
Yeah.
And before I could get to that point, there was a long journey I needed to go on, and it all started with day one of the experience, right? Then day two, and day two was incredibly intense feelings of just numbness, hopelessness, and then experiences that are really hard to share because they were so personal, but something, inside of me kind of opened up to seeing or feeling beyond what we just see in our lives. And part of that would be the trauma of the brain for sure. And part of that was bringing in the spirituality side of it, and what energy was left behind during that experience. And that energy was very intense, and it felt like it wanted to hurt me. In all honesty, I didn't feel safe. I couldn't close my eyes. So that really impacted my ability to sleep. Because if I closed my eyes, I got these just vivid images.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be left alone because I felt something was there, really trying to hurt me or whatever it was. It just felt so, so strong. I don't know if you have ever had that sense where you feel like something else is in the room, or when something's going to be there when you walk into a room, like a person's there. You get that energetic connection and feeling.
Absolutely, yeah.
I could be sat at the dining table. A perfect experience is what I was sat at the dining table, and this was months after. And I tried to spend a night by myself for the first time, and this honestly was 3 or 4 months afterwards.
Yeah,
if not a bit longer. And I'm sat down having dinner, and I just felt the presence of something far on the other side of the room, and then suddenly it's right next to me, and I'm scared. Honestly, I'm so scared. It's like someone was physically there.
What do you think that was?
I think it was the part of the energy, part of the experience that had been left behind. And I also recall something else I said, and I don't know what it was. Like, obviously, you go through that and you have no idea what to say, right? But something that I said was, like, may you, like, please rest in peace, whatever is left behind, I'll deal with. Not having no idea what that was, but opening up this huge energetic boundary to let whatever in that was present on that day into my life. And it felt like some very, very dark energy.
Do you think it was her?
I don't know if it was her, if it was energy that she'd been dealing with. It's really hard to know, right? Some of these things they can't really be explained, and it's all up to individuals' beliefs, faith, and opinions, right?
Of course. This is how you feel and what you think it was.
Yeah.
Because no one can tell you otherwise, right?
It was very dark and possessive energy, and it didn't feel like it wanted people to experience happiness, gratitude, love. It felt complete opposite. Like it just wanted to keep you down. And as we expand a little bit, I've got examples of how that played out throughout
Please.
my whole healing journey.
Quickly though, are you saying there? Correct me wrong, because I might be going on a different wavelength. But are you thinking she's angry? Is that what the dark energy is? That what you're referring to? Or have I gone off there?
I mean, it's so hard to know, right?
Hmm.
You don't get those answers.
No.
You never know. It's something you have to learn to live with and process and heal yourself.
Hmm.
It's what makes losing someone to suicide such a complex grief to process, because you'll never have the answers.
Yeah, I mean, your journey is not just experiencing losing suicide; it's also being the one that found her. Um, I don't think many people can comprehend. Okay, so the next few months, I know we're going to go back, because I think the structure of this episode changed, and I think it was beautiful how it changed, because I think you're right. I think you never thought about maybe your journey prior to that until this moment, and that's why I think it was good. You were right, 100% right, why we started there. But just the next few months, obviously, you've mentioned day one. I feel like you've categorized the days. Did you? And I don't think many people would probably go in the direction you did initially. The fact that you thought about how resilient and that you were going to be, and not that you were going to let this define you. I love that. I don't personally think many people would probably have gone that direction as soon as you did. And I think that's incredible. I think they probably would have gone into, not that your journey wasn't dark, because obviously you've been on a massive journey, but I've experienced people that I know who have held on to it in a different way, right, and not in a healthy way, which impacts life and body in a different way, whether it's disease, impacts on the body, brain, so on. But you didn't. So did you? And you mentioned the days. Did you journal straight away? Did you start to write? Because one of the pictures here, and that's probably the reason why I got that picture. I got this picture because it's actually a picture that you shared on social media about. It's going to be reflect, so I might have to do it from the side. And it says on the picture, a date and journey that has taught me so much. Now, obviously, this isn't immediately afterwards, but did you start to journal straight away? Was it, and if not, when did you start? Because I know that's obviously a big part of your journey, if I'm correct.
So, just I guess to build a bit more of a picture of, the events afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm from England, so obviously my family were over in the UK.
Yeah.
My partner was also from England. Her family were over in the UK. So there was a process that I needed to go through from a practical standpoint of dealing with everything you have to deal with when someone dies. And that was maybe 2 to 3 weeks. The only way to explain it is like I was not a human in that period of time.
Yeah.
And I was just in survival mode. And through, my whole journey, I've always been very open to healing and psychology and things like that. So in the first couple of days, it was for me, and I don't think I was feeling rational or anything. It was just, how do I get through? Like, how do I survive these first couple of days? And it was, conversations with a psychologist who I'd worked with in the past, and just having my best friend, and my best friend Adam, who I'm very fortunate we grew up together in the UK as well, and he also lives in Melbourne. So I was so fortunate to have someone who knew me so well so deeply right by my side, and he almost took care of everything and just let me survive, just be there and
sit in your emotions.
Yeah, sit in whatever it was I was sitting in, because it was extreme and it was intense. Um, so that was kind of the 3 weeks afterwards, and very sleep deprived, and just like I mentioned before, really hard for me to be left alone. And it eventually got to the date where, a lot of the stuff had been sorted out. We'd managed to organize my partner's body being flown back to the UK, and I just booked a flight straight away as soon as that was done, and got myself back home to be with my parents and my brother and sister. And it's tough. Like, it was really hard because I love my family, but who is equipped to be able to support someone going through that?
Yeah.
And it was things like that, and things like, that comment I mentioned before, like, this won't define me. Like, I believe we have, kind of two main paths in something. When you're blindsided, is this going to control my life and lead me to make decisions that aren't healthy for me? Or is this going to empower me and give me purpose to live, and to live life in a new way? And I connected with that path just in such a deep way that I instantly, when I got back to the UK, was like, okay, like, someone's staying in the room with me every night. The lights are on, because I'm like, I really don't want to sleep the lights off. And, over time, I got more and more sleep, and waking up in the morning, like, there was nothing in my plan, no journaling, no anything apart from, can I get myself out of bed today? If I can get myself out of bed today, that, looking back, that was a win.
Step one. Yeah.
And it took, a period of time of that being the only thing I could achieve that day. And even if I only got out of bed for 1 minute.
Small percentage steps, right?
Then the next step was, can I get out of bed and can I shower?
Yeah.
The time a beard had grown long, and obviously all those things, I was like, I don't care anymore, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But can I start to just do little things to take care of myself, to show myself some love, to reward myself? And those little things just continue to grow over time.
What was the next? So the getting out of bed for 1 minute and whatnot. What was the next few small tiny steps? Because I think that's an important part for the listeners who might have experienced or going through or just would like to understand how other people deal with stuff. What were the next tiny steps you took then? Because I think that's important. Getting out of bed once for 1 minute in the day, small simple steps. What do you? You don't have to go through them all, because obviously it's been a huge journey. I know you're going to go through quite a lot. What was the next few steps after that? Getting out of bed for 1 minute.
Get out of bed, showering, getting my clothes on, making my bed became a really pivotal part of my healing journey, almost like a building block. And it sounds so simple, but holding myself accountable to make my bed had a snowball effect as I continued to heal and recover and grow. And I guess brought in structural aspects to my life that I was so used to with, being an ex-professional basketball player, that I begin to, I'd make a list of 5 things: get out of bed, shower, brush teeth, put clothes on, make bed. And I would start to tick them.
Yeah, nice.
And they were like little reinforcements, little rewards, because that's all at that time I could really do. Like
Yeah.
emotionally, like I was so emotionally and mentally, I was so far away from being able to tackle what I had to tackle. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And I didn't even know where to start.
Who would?
Um, so I continued to do all those little things, and eventually, I got to the point where I kept myself very isolated. Even physically, people were there. I was so isolated and disconnected from life, so numb to it.
Mm.
And that I actually put a post on my personal Instagram a while back, being like my mother's love was one of the biggest driving forces in my healing, because I couldn't. It's still this part, like, it brings tears to my eyes because it shows how powerful your mother's love is.
Mm-hmm.
But it was my mum's love that I couldn't feel. That was such a big driving force in my healing, because I wanted to feel that from my mum.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to feel her love, her nurture, everything she's always been in my life. I lost connection to that. And honestly, I had anger towards my family. It wasn't necessarily my family that were doing nothing wrong. I was just angry in general.
Mm-hmm.
But to know that, to consciously be aware that you're angry and you're projecting onto people, it's not a nice feeling to carry. And I didn't want to do that. Um, I've kind of lost my train of thought a little bit because my emotions have just come up. There's the power of,
No,
power
it's
of love.
uh, yeah. Huey Lewis in the news. No, it's great. No, it's beautiful, man, and I think this is why we're doing this episode, because you're creating a safe space. Even if you lose track, you're creating a safe space for people to be vulnerable and to understand and acknowledge everything that they're feeling. Even just how reflective you are. The fact that you're projecting onto your parents. Most people don't do that. People just lash out at the loved ones, and they don't even think about understanding why. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, it's no one's fault.
No.
So,
They would have known that though, right? Your family knew that.
yeah. Yeah, it's not their fault. It's not my fault. It wasn't my partner's fault what happened. Like,
Mm.
yes, people who make that decision, they are in control to some extent, but the
Yeah.
problem's much, much bigger. It's a
Yeah.
societal problem.
Mm.
And the structures that we have that are out there require some changes. When people feel so alone that is their only option to take.
Mm.
Um, but we were talking about the checklist of activities.
Yeah.
Doing these over time just helped me rebuild a little bit, and very
Yeah.
slowly, but it got me to the point where I was able to do things like go to the gym,
Yeah.
go out for runs, go out for walks,
Yeah.
start trying to build some foundations for my life again. And I went to what helps me at that time. What helped me was physical things, because that's what I was
Mm.
so used to. Bad day, go to the gym, feel a bit better. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I knew at the time. But it was also really, in an emotional and mental standpoint, knew that there was probably some really key decisions or key priorities that I needed to focus on. And the first thing I remember emotionally thinking, as much as I wanted what had happened to change, as much as I wished that they were still here, they weren't. And I had to learn to accept that. And that was one of the first things I spent a lot of my, I guess, effort on. Accepting that they no longer had a life to live, that they no longer were gonna. I mean, my partner shared so much love with other people. Like, she made so many other people's lives happier. It was insane.
Mm.
She brought so much love and joy to other people's lives. And that was such a beautiful gift that she left with us, and she left, to learn from. But still, nonetheless, I had to learn to accept that her life was gone. She was no longer, couldn't be a part of my life anymore in a physical sense. And I just worked so hard on accepting that. And at the time, trying more cognitive type therapies, to find that acceptance and to start processing the trauma and the shock of, the experience in not just losing someone, but finding them. That was very traumatic and complex.
How a lot of people again say, I need to accept it, but they don't know how. How did you figure out the how?
That's a very deep question to answer. Like, a lot of the experience over the last 4 years has so much personal depth and understanding in my own language, and being able to share that and express it is quite a challenging thing that I still struggle with today. But I guess trying to simplify it, it was telling yourself, this person is not here. Like, you're not going to get to live that life with them. You're not going to get to see them live their life. It was just like repeating it, writing it down, writing down my anger with the intention of finding acceptance, writing down my heartbreak with the intention of finding acceptance, writing down whatever the theme it was, but I always had the intention of trying to get myself to a place of acceptance. And don't get me wrong, that first level of acceptance is very different to the acceptance I feel now. Dramatically different.
Yeah. What level of acceptance do you think you feel now?
I'm at peace now. I feel at peace with what's happened. And it took a long time to get there.
How long do you think?
3.5 years. And it was 3.5 of intentional years.
You've been on one hell of a journey, that's for sure. Before we travel back, can I ask, what darkness do you think she was going through?
It's honestly, it's not really a question that I'm comfortable answering, because it has levels of respect. And the shortest answer is, I don't know, because what I felt was through my own experience and through my own darkness, my own things. So it's still my perception.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's carrying part of theirs, it's still my perception of it, and it's still how I've connected to it.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the part where you kind of connected to your purpose that day, or the day later, I know, on your walk that night. Where do you think that comes from? Because there must be an underlying issue, and probably we will go back to maybe your mother's connection, your mother's love, back to your childhood. Where do you think that comes from? I don't think that just appears in your system. Where do you think that comes from? Can you connect to that bit, maybe?
I think part of it comes from my background as a sports person. That resilience, that almost you suffer defeat and you figure out how to win. And I say that example just there, I don't want to use that language in relation to this experience, but in the basketball sense,
Mm-hmm.
You suffer defeat, you're like, okay, how can I win? It's your resilience, you bounce back and you go to your next game looking to win, right? You don't
Yeah.
hold on to the loss.
Mm-hmm.
Very different in this situation, but that was so deeply wired into me through basketball
Mm-hmm.
and probably through my parents as well. Um, and I think a part of it is this care factor of I never want someone to ever experience what my partner felt at that point. And I don't know what that is, but what she felt at that point that led to the decision.
Mm.
I never want family or friends to experience what happens when someone dies by suicide. And I
Of
never want
course.
anyone to go through the experience that I've been through
Yeah.
because it was challenging. Like I had days where I had a glimmer of hope that kept me here. Like it was so painful and it happened just before COVID as well. So
Mm. Yeah. Tough times happen. My God.
it was, you know, 2 years of navigating this loss and actually being isolated during COVID over here in Melbourne. Like we couldn't leave our apartments basically. And that was very, very painful and hard and so many things, but I would never change it because I would never have got to where I am had I not been forced into dealing with
Mm.
all levels of pain and emotions and trauma.
So, so isolation in a lockdown sense, um, was it a blessing in disguise? Do you think? Or
I
I know you wouldn't
mean,
change your route, but
it was adding more trauma on top of other trauma
okay.
that I've had to also work through.
Mm.
Um, so I wouldn't have thought it was a blessing in disguise at the time because I was hanging on,
Yeah.
and at times, like I would go to bed not wanting to wake up because I couldn't handle what I was going through and what we were all going through as a whole collective community and society with COVID.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but the blessing in it is, I guess, it taught me to be stronger. It built into that resilience even more, and it pushed me in ways that I never would have been pushed um, to get to where I am, I guess, today.
Yeah. Man, I look up to you so much in that regard, man. Absolutely. Jeez. Well, let's go back and start with your basketball journey then. Let's start with I remember our discussion and your journey being such an amazing one, but then became such a challenge. Can you take us back there?
Yeah, so my basketball was my whole life, and until the day I stopped playing it, pretty much. I come from a basketball family. My dad was a basketball coach. My dad owned a basketball team, so I was involved in basketball from day dot. I was
Yeah.
always exposed to it, always part of it. Um, so naturally, I started playing basketball and had access to you know coaches and skills and development that really helped me progress. Um, and my teens and my late teens and my early 20s, like for me, were a very, very enjoyable time of basketball. You're getting to travel the country with your best mates, people you're so connected with, and you're getting to have fun,
Mm.
winning games. I mean, we weren't always winning. Like we definitely used to get our ass whooped in our earlier days when we started playing men's professional basketball, but sorry, men's national league. But as we progressed and matured, we had some really good times. I have some amazing memories of basketball. Um,
The bus
the
rides.
bus rides, the nights out when you're like, let's go blow off some steam, and
When you
um,
shouldn't go drinking on the bus on the way home, but you end up going out into the city afterwards.
absolutely, like you're spending all this time, developing your craft. You've got to blow off some steam.
Totally.
So basketball was so much fun for me, and I found a lot of personal success with it in that it fulfilled me.
Mm.
And I got to travel with it. Europe, it brought me to Australia. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Why I moved to Australia for basketball originally.
What was your? Can I ask what your highest achievement, highlight of your basketball career is? Would you say?
Highest achievement?
Mm.
Ooh. So my most favorable and memorable achievement is when we were still in National League Division 2. We had a squad and we only had 8 or 9 players, so like we didn't have many,
Mm.
and we were all students. 7 of us went to the same uni and played on the same uni basketball team, which was linked with our National League team,
Yeah.
and we just had such beautiful chemistry, and we all just got on so well. You know, when like you go and you have dinner with each other every night, or pre-training dinners. It was just that kind of vibe, like very connected. And that we had a really successful year that year. We won National League Division 2. We won the Patrons Cup. We won the playoff championship. Like we had a clean sweep, and
Yeah. Wow.
through our efforts and through my efforts, I got National Player of the Year that year as well, which is actually I got that 2 years in a row. I got the year before as well. But this
Yeah,
particular
nice.
season was just an amazing memory, and it's one I look back on with a big smile, and I feel the love of all my teammates when I think about it.
Oh, that's nice.
There's a more like achievement standpoint from where I, wanted to get myself to. I would have to say, representing England at different age groups, Great Britain at different age groups, and things like that.
Yeah, nice. I like that. That's awesome. Mm. And so apart, and everyone just thinks that I mean, you've just mentioned the basketball solely being affected, apart from you mentally and personally and so on. But just go to the basketball scene at the moment. Then it's not just you on the court who's being affected. You've got a lot of people watching as well. Did you get any? Did you start to feel anything from outside of the court? You know, coaches, teammates, crowd, so on, whatever. Did you get
I
anything from
started
that?
to really second guess myself, right? Because I didn't
Mm.
feel like my voice was my truth anymore, and I'd lost my power.
Mm.
Um, and it leads you to second guessing yourself. So that's obviously going to impact your connection with your teammates, because they still might be that loving person that they always are, but you're second guessing things.
Mm.
And it's sport. It's about performance, right?
Yeah.
And I was second guessing myself and so stressed and anxious. This is when this really started developing, the kind of anxiety and the stress in that relationship. It really developed to the point where you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it towards the start of this session that carrying things can lead to not only mental health issues but physical health issues. And
Mm.
I remember mid-season in our second season in the BBL, so 2012 or 13, I got meningitis in the middle of the season.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think that was influenced by the amount of stress and anxiety I was carrying.
That's what I believe, 100%. Yeah. So, did anyone ever pull you to the side? Did anyone ever sit down and talk to you about this? Did anyone see it in you?
I don't think so.
Mm.
I mean, they potentially may have seen a difference in outcome of performance.
Well, that's what I mean. Did anyone like coach sit down with you and go, "Hey, you're not performing like the Paul that I know"? Did any of those conversations happen or not?
I mean, I can't remember if those conversations did happen. I have a
Okay.
general feel that, you know, 10 years ago is, or even longer, is actually a long time ago. We have progressed a lot as people since then, in the fact that we actually talk about things. We understand
Mm.
how much the psychological aspect of sport can impact your performance. It's
Mm.
actually the main part of performance. And we've
Yeah.
all, a lot of people said, it's 95% mental. It is, but do we ever really understand what that 95% stood for? And I just don't think environments that I was in when I was younger were environments where it was spoken about in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so important. And this is not me bringing it up for the sake of bringing it up. The person that I wrote the book with, that's what he specializes in, the neuro-linguistic side of it. He cares about the players on the court or the pitch or whatever sport they're in. The impacts from the crowd, the impacts of the coaches, the assistant coaches and teammates, what's going on personally in their life, and trying to get them to understand the importance of this, talking, doing a plan, even not just that, the external factor, speaking to the coaches to get them to think at a human level about their players and get to connect with them at a much deeper level as well. So you're right, that wasn't there 10 years ago, and he probably didn't have a platform, but he definitely believes in that so strongly. And yeah, you're right, it's so different in how we think now. Do you think that's different in sports now, though? Do you think it's there? Because obviously we're not quite as involved at those levels anymore. I know you were slightly higher in those levels than I was, but do you think it's changed now? Do you think it's more prevalent to talk about it?
I don't know is the honest answer, because I'm not in those environments. And
Yeah,
the world is kind of in a way now where we see the highlights of everything. So on platforms like Instagram, we see, oh, this person's opened up about their mental health or whatever it may be. But do we know actually what it's like on the ground? I have no idea.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I was the same. So that's why I was asking you, because a bit of an external question, that one, because I wasn't too sure. But, I think we are bringing the emotional side of things back into play. I've learned from these books back in the day, tens of thousands of years ago, we only really had the limbic system part of the brain where it was all emotional. And through evolution, we started to, develop the prefrontal cortex, which was all logical thinking, regulation. And I think from the, I don't know when, it's 60s, 70s and so on, until maybe the last 10 years, we looked at his the emotional side of the head as a weakness, right?
Especially in male sport.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. And now I think we are bringing more that emotional side of things back to, whether it's leadership, whether it's personal life, whether it's in work, which I think is really, really important. And that's where the intuition comes into, that gut feeling you were talking about. That brain down here is so important. Usually our gut feeling is so, we're just not in tune with it. But usually it turns out right. Doesn't it?
We've got layers and layers and layers of conditioning and wiring that is on top of who we truly are at our deepest parts of ourselves, right? Because from an early age, you're exposed to schooling systems, to societal structures, to politics, to media, to all these different things that influence your life. And I truly, for me personally, they don't influence them for the better. They influence them for the wrong intentions. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, I know.
But we are human, emotional beings, right? And connection is such an important part of our life. Connection is one of the biggest healers there is out there.
Has to be number one.
Yeah.
As the root cause of most things as well. Not even post-treatment, as the core. Let's look down at the core level of where it begins. I think we'd cut a lot out of this. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if connection is that pivotal, right?
Yeah.
In this sense, I'm talking about connection to people.
Yeah, no, me too, yeah.
Right? And if we take it one step further, connection to yourself. I don't believe you can truly connect to others if you can't truly connect to yourself. And there's a lot that is put out in front of us that really guides us away from the connection to ourselves.
Yep.
It's living in a world where potentially it's success, drive for that, every man for themselves, every person for themselves. It's about everyone. And connection is so powerful.
Yeah, and I think this leadership journey that's led to leading our own way it's not about leading everybody else. How can you lead everybody else if you can't lead yourself? It has to start with purpose, and it has to start with the self. Has to. If you can understand yourself at a deeper level, you'll start to understand what your purpose is. Once you've got that nailed, I think that's when the rest of the journey can start. You know?
Yeah. And I think it's the same with kind of all parts of emotions, right? It's like, if you don't truly love yourself, can you truly love another?
Yeah.
If you don't feel deep gratitude for yourself, can you truly provide deep gratitude for another? It all has to be felt within to give it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, we have these survival emotions, whether they're perceived negative or positive, they're all equally as important as each other. You know, you've got 5 negative ones versus 3 positive ones, if we want to label them that way, which I don't like doing it, but just for the sake of argument. You know, you've got your shame, your fear, your disgust and sadness and so on. But then you've got your joy, your trust, love. And no wonder we tend to go to the negative side, because 5 out of the 8 are negative, or the other end of the spectrum, should I say.
It's also, I would add environmental influences,
Yeah.
societal influences.
Yeah.
And you love to know your opinion on this, but with what we categorize as negative emotions, there are also frequencies, right? Energetic frequencies, and the negative emotions are lower down, and the positive emotions are higher up.
Yeah.
You're never going to be at the top all the time, and you're never
Never.
going to be at the bottom all the time. But we label things, and we have developed beliefs and stories of what means what, that it really impacts and influences who we are each day. And a really pivotal part of healing from my own experience was, if I'm angry or I'm in grief or shame or whatever emotion it is, I don't need to escape it.
No.
Because the reason why those things got so unhealthy in the first place is because I was taught to suppress them or repress them subconsciously. It's not about escaping them. It's about sitting in it, loving yourself just as much as you love yourself when you have gratitude for yourself at every single level.
Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's like the achievement of getting happiness. I don't think happiness really exists. I don't think we can achieve the state of happiness. I feel there's 3 components to happiness, and I think that would be, meaning / purpose, enjoyment, something that we enjoy doing, and satisfaction. Because we come out of enjoyment sometimes, but when you come out of enjoyment, are you satisfied? And I think that's constructs happiness, if that makes sense. Those 3 components, I think, are key to achieving some form of happiness. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I would add to it, what brings the happiness, right? Because the old structural way of life is work, material things, gives you happiness. I don't know about you, but when I bought a nice car in the past, I just never changed. For that brief moment, I felt good, but then I quickly go back to however I was feeling before.
Yeah,
it's not sustainable.
It's a hit, isn't it? You get in a hit and then you go on a downer.
Yeah,
it on a bigger scale, maybe. Right? I was the same. I thought things would change in my life. I'd build a house, got a new car, have kids. I'll be open and honest. I wasn't happy.
Yeah, because there's still external things. For me, it's internal connection, internal happiness, internal love, internal anger. In all of the things we can learn to just accept them for what they are, live them, not label them, and not chase things on the extrinsically or externally to give us what it is we want in life.
Yeah. Okay. So you're playing basketball back. Did you continue playing basketball here, or was that journey over?
I continued playing basketball for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think some things can be challenging for me to explain because of that healing period I've had. It's like it was such a dramatic amount of healing and growth that whenever I look back in the past, I see it from so many different lenses, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, which lens do I want to share?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so many different ways. I could be like, that guy was, can I swear?
For sure.
That guy was, fuckhead, he was lost. Or that
Yeah.
guy was just having fun, doing his thing. You know, like there's so many different ways to look at it. Because at the end of the day, like, it's just a part of life, and we grow and we experience through and mature through our experiences.
Yeah. Okay, so you then meet your partner, and obviously you go through the terrible ordeal. Let's go to after that, when you started to go on this massive, massive journey of personal development. You went on I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to say. You went on a discovery journey to really define your purpose. Now, this is the next level of purpose. Can you tell everybody what you started to delve into?
Oh wow, it's a huge 4 years, right?
Massive.
And I mean, it might be easy for me to explain it through a chronological order.
Yeah, sure. Perfect.
So initially, what I was aware of at the time was the normal types of services that are available to help you, different types of therapy. So that's what I explored: psychology, psychotherapy, and these were, helping for sure. But I never, after a period of time, I wasn't seeing any more improvement. And I was like, there's got to be alternative things out there. And these things hadn't been on my radar at that time. And those are things like, energy healing sessions and Reiki and those types of things. And I started to really explore them. And I found such profound shifts because, like we mentioned earlier on, with that dark energy that was around me, that was still had a lot of control in the situation, and that started to get cleansed. And it's probably, I'm up to 2 years now of, the 4 year journey at this point. And I'm just still in survival mode because I couldn't take myself out of the experience, stuff that was happening with COVID, and I obviously I had to go back to work, start, earning a living to support myself, and I was so far from being ready to work. So it's like I resumed life, but wasn't existing in life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just had this plan that, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So I continued with the healing, the different varieties of healing. But I had a goal: is as soon as COVID's over and these borders open up, I'm going to travel. I'm going to see and expose myself to so many different ways of doing things and healing. And, I went to different parts of the world and tried different things. A lot of it was self-practice and self-taught, right? And some of it was going out to try sessions. And I eventually came across breath work. And I went through a somatic breathwork session, and this is an hour and a half of breathing, pretty much. That's all you're doing. And the somatic session is shaped in a way that we are so good at living in our minds, right? But what we said before is somatically we carry imprints of trauma. And I went through this somatic session of just breathing, and it's, you don't know what's happening. And I got to the end of this first session, I was like, I had no idea what just happened, but I felt this huge shift. Like the space had opened up inside of me. And it gave me enough light to be like, okay, like you really need to progress this healing because this experience still has control over your life. It's controlling your emotions, how you're showing up into life, how you're showing up around other people. So I went on this really deep 9-month healing journey where I almost disconnected from everything because I had this intention of just doing whatever I need to take to get myself in a position where I could live life and have fun and be happy again. So it was kind of like locking my front door, staying in my house, and doing whatever needed to be done. And I worked with a healer at the time, a trauma healer, going through very different approaches to healing. That was all bottom up. So it was all about somatic, processing and revisiting ourselves through different stages of our lives, all the way back to before we were born. Like, because with trauma, right? Like, what kind of blew my mind when I started to dive into this topic was you have acute trauma, right? Which is an event itself, a particular event. You have generational trauma, intergenerational trauma, ancestral trauma, which we carry 10 generations of ancestral trauma. Think about all the stuff our ancestors would have been exposed to and been through: war, famine, disease, like so many different things that we, from a cellular level, we're carrying some of that.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating stuff when you start looking into it. We've got collective trauma, which is societal, everything we're exposed to.
When you're, I do, I do a lot of reading and stuff, but when and I think this is generational, correct me if I'm wrong, but if your mum is going through some form of trauma or stress through through the process of conception, that can be held within you as well.
Absolutely.
Is that generational?
Well, yeah. And it's not only that, like, you got to think about when your grandma was born, whatever she was going through, passed on to your mum, and then it's passed on to you.
Yeah.
And it just keeps on going.
Yeah.
So the intergenerational, generational, ancestral, they kind of form a linkage.
The layers, yeah.
So there's so many different types of trauma, right? And I was like, well, I wasn't aware that I had such deep trauma apart from the acute experience itself, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Because this is why I've been exposed to a lot of situations that aren't healthy for me because I accept them. I didn't have strong boundaries towards them. I didn't protect myself. I sacrificed. I'm sure a lot of people can relate with the fact that you sacrifice for someone else, or you don't want to hurt someone else. All these types of things like that comes from trauma. It could come from, something that happened early on in your life. It could come from your mum, from your dad, mother wound, father wound, like different ways. Like, and it's such a big, complex discussion. Like, we shouldn't really, like, I don't think we should dive into it now. I'll just say that I dove into, throughout my healing journey and explored it and explored ways to reconnect with myself in so many different levels: physically, emotionally, mentally, centrally, sexually, tantra, and all those types of things that I gave everything a go. Like, truly, I did. Mm-hmm. And it got very deep and hard and lonely and challenging, but it was worth all those kind of sacrifices.
Yeah. So what's the future for Paul then? Because I know you've been on a journey and what you set up, what you're currently working on in your spare time. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your journey going forward?
Yeah, so I mentioned at the start, I'm kind of going through a transitional period at the moment, and part of that is leaving the corporate world behind, and stepping into breathwork coach. So becoming a breathwork coach. So over the past year, I spent a lot of time, developing the skills for that, the certifications that are required, understanding the science, the origins of it, all those different types of things to start teaching, coaching breathwork, and also delivering particular breathwork sessions, like a somatic breathwork session, or a regenerative breathwork session. I'm happy to talk about what they are quickly, or we can just move on.
Yeah, sure. Because I want this to be tips for people. It's not as well as sharing your story and people getting something from your story. I want people to get something that they can take into their lives as well.
Yeah.
So go for it, absolutely.
So I mentioned the bottom up approach to healing, right? Yeah. So I mentioned something earlier on about bottom up healing. So bottom up approach for me is, a somatic led healing journey. So it's not cognitively, a lot of what we do and I guess have access to is cognitive based therapies. Well, the bottom up approach is a more somatic based therapy. So it's actually learning to process and release trauma and somatic imprints in cellular memories that are in the body still from all of our experiences throughout life, whatever they may be. So with a bottom up approach to kind of healing, we have the nervous system, which plays a huge part in our daily functions, right? And the nervous system consists of two main parts. You've got the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system. And under the peripheral nervous system, we have the sympathetic branch and the parasympathetic branch. So sympathetic is often related to is fight or flight. So we'll all be familiar with those terms. You know, we could become anxious. We're generally going to be in a sympathetic state. We also have the parasympathetic state. And the parasympathetic state is when we're in a state of rest and digest. So it's kind of like when we're more in flow, when we're feeling calm. And there's different types of practices and modalities you can use to activate those nervous systems. But one which I've really focused in on because of how much it's helped me throughout my healing journey is breath work. So with breath work, there's different sessions. And two of the sessions that I work with are somatic breath work and regenerative breath work. So with regenerative breath work, it is a session where basically we're just activating the parasympathetic nervous system throughout the whole session. So to do that, we're using different breathing techniques. And it's just trying to think of the best way to explain it. So breath work is a really powerful tool for being able to activate those different parts of the nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic. And generally, because when we experience something, we've gone into a sympathetic state, fight or flight, that's where a lot of, the kind of the memories and the imprints are. So with breathwork, we can safely activate the sympathetic nervous system. We can take ourselves into it through the conscious use of our breath. And this is where, I don't know if you've seen it on Instagram or, if any of the viewers have seen it, it's where you see a lot of people having kind of bodily reactions when they do breath work because they're processing, they're releasing stuff. Their body is letting go of something that they've held on to for so long.
Yeah.
And this goes like way beyond the conscious mind, right? Like 95% of what we do is apparently subconscious. If you look at the subconscious part of ourselves in being the body, that's 95% of what we do is being driven by the memories and the imprints within our body. And breathwork is an opportunity to start releasing that. And you're not always going to be consciously aware of it, but you'll feel a relief post it. And it's a really, for me, it's been such an important practice to incorporate into my daily routine. Like every day I'll do 3 different types of breath work. And then I'll also do, a breath work journey, whether it's somatic or regenerative. Any questions on that?
Yeah, no, I do actually. Do breath work really elevates what we said before about the positive emotions? Is that correct? It really brings them out. I don't know what the right terminology to use. I've been reading about it in the source in connection with the brain, and obviously Breathe by James Nestor.
Yeah.
And he talks about the elevation of those those. I'm trying to think of a better word of positive emotions. Am I right in that?
I mean, breathwork gives you the opportunity to shift your state.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
So talk about what, because you taught me a breath work. I do it quite a lot in my cold water exposure. I actually use it and mix it in with that, and I feel like I get a lot from it. And I use your 4-7-8 breath work.
yeah,
Is that right? 4-7-8.
yeah.
Just just quickly, and why 4-7-8? Can you quickly go through that process of the
So
4-7-8?
4-7-8's generally a breathwork practice you can use to really calm down your nervous system.
Yeah.
So it's a great technique to use before going to bed. So let's say it could be 10, 15 minutes of breathing in. So this is all through your nose as well. So
Yeah.
nasal breathing is a really important part of activating the nervous system. And on your breath in, you're generally activating the sympathetic nervous system on a breath in.
Yeah.
On a breath out. And there's more science behind that. Lung volume and lungs emptied, lungs full, and so on. But breathing in, generally, you're activating the sympathetic nervous system. Breathing out, you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you breathe in for 4 seconds, it's a lower count, right? You're then holding for 7 seconds. And then you're breathing out for 8 seconds. So the exhale is longer than the inhale. So it means that we are activating the parasympathetic at a higher rate than we are the sympathetic.
All right, thanks, Paul. That's awesome. I think people should definitely look into the different types of breathworks, and I know there's other types of breathworks too that I've briefly touched on. It's not just the 4-7-8 that I do. There's a few others that I do, and the box breathing, things like that. I've definitely followed some of yours, but I've also looked at the breath book by James Nesser. Obviously, Wim Hof's out there, which I've not gone too much into. Have you touched on with Wim Hof quite a lot?
No, not too much actually.
Yeah,
A
me
lot of
neither.
the, yeah, a lot of his breathing is to prepare for cold water immersion
Yeah, yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah, which I've definitely benefited from. I do it in my own way. I still haven't followed him per se, but I definitely enjoy I do that for my clarity reasons for the day. Just set me up nicely for the day. So your journey now going forward, before we come to a close, you're going into a new line of work. Can you talk about some of the things you've now created?
Yeah, so one of the things is the breathwork business. So it's called Expansive Breath.
Yeah.
Actually just launched the website just a few days ago.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Thank you. So it's live out there. Looking to work with clients. So just started, Instagram account, which is at Expansive Breath. And yeah, I'm in no rush. I'm still learning. I'm still developing my practice and my craft and understanding, the science at a deeper level. So one of the certifications I've done is with Oxygen Advantage, which teaches functional breathing, which is, nasal breathing, bringing up from your belly, diaphragm, and out. And it's, there's different methods that they use for that.
Yeah.
And that's a really kind of scientific backed, I guess, breathwork technique. And I thought that was a really good place to explore, to understand the science behind, why it is we use breathwork.
Yeah.
Because it's used a lot in the healing world, right? And it's used a lot spiritually. In that side, the science on that side is, evolving.
Yeah.
So I wanted to really ground in a practice that was, had a lot of science behind it already. There's then a lot of pranayama techniques. So certified in that too. And then there is obviously the transformational journey. So the somatic breath work, the regenerative breath work, which is a combination of techniques in the sessions.
Yeah, nice. So people will be able to sign up to the website. What does that look like to the customer, to the people that will come to you?
So at the moment, website's pretty basic. So we've just got started, but it gives a lot about why expansive breath was created. It touches upon, trauma, healing, the nervous system, and tries to share the story about how breath work
Yeah.
can support someone in self-development or in healing, in growth, in managing stress, in managing anxiety, and managing overwhelm. Because it's really a tool that can be used across so many different things.
Yeah. I love that you're getting it out there, man. I really love that you've led your own way from these experiences, and which has opened a world up to go back to your childhood and really evaluate the journey in early life as well. Many people don't go far back like that, like you have, and yes, unfortunately, you went through something that most hopefully will never go through, or people around us will never go through. But I think you're turning it into such a positive journey. And I think a lot of people will get a lot out of your story. And I think, I'll put, if I can have all of those credentials, websites, and I'll put all the social media in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to connect with Paul, and his journey going forward, and you feel like you can benefit from that, I'll put everything in the show notes, guys. If you could contact Paul and do whatever you need to do, that would be amazing. So I'll grab that from you at some point, Paul, and make sure I get it right, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. And, on the website, there's the opportunity to book in for consultation just so we can have a chat, see where people are at, or you can jump right in and book for a session if you just want to jump into it and see how a session can help you.
Yeah, perfect. And I love it. Absolutely love it. And that is your purpose now, man. I think, I know you've already probably figured out your purpose, but that is definitely, I feel that's your purpose. It's not for me to tell you what your purpose is, but, if you've got a piece of advice that you could give any of these viewers, whatever they may be going through, one piece of advice from your experiences, what could you give to people? What line of advice would you give for anyone that may be struggling?
That's a brilliant question. And there's lots of advice that I gave to myself throughout the different parts of my journey. So, some land better at different parts of people's journey. But I would honestly just say one of the biggest things is believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And trusting in yourself. Knowing that no one has good days all the time. And it's in, generally what I found in the harder days and the bad days, that's where most of the growth comes from. It's been able to sit in your pain, sit in the discomfort. I used to look at them as voids. It's like, I'm in this really dark place. But that's where the power of, bringing in love and gratitude and shining it into those darker places and learning how to do that is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go, I have to say, when we connected, I'm an open book, and I shared my journey with you, and we did speak on the phone. But one time I shared with you my journey, what I considered my trauma, and I never knew anything of your journey at that point. And I look back and get a bit embarrassed because I just rattled on about my thing, right? And when people come to me and talk to me about their journeys and stuff, I know sitting and holding space for me is the most important. Just sitting in silence, but I'm guilty of it. I've given my advice, and then in that moment, I've probably shared pieces of my journey that I feel may connect to their journey, because sometimes I feel like it can be relatable, and I feel that can be powerful in the moment. But then I reflect and go, I shouldn't have done it. I should have just sat. I should have just heard them and should have just listened. And, vice versa. Sometimes when I'm sharing mine, and most people want to part wisdom because it's all good intentions. Absolutely. It's all good and beautiful intentions from everybody. And I feel like it's beautiful intention from me too, right? But with our conversation, you sat, you listened, and you never said a word. And it was so powerful to me, because I got off and I just felt heard, right? Sorry, I'm getting upset. And
it's making my heart cry.
But then I came to you. We had a drink at your place, and you shared your journey with me. Like, shit. It made me feel a little bit like, not that you made me feel like this because you didn't, but I sat back and gone, fuck, I shouldn't be worried about my shit, man. Fuck, this guy's been through fucking darkness as dark can possibly be. And I said that to you, I think. And I remember the words that you then shared afterwards. And you said, Andy, there's no ranking on trauma. I'll never forget that, man. Honestly. And I always probably knew that to some extent, but you said it. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you, man.
That's, I mean, that brings up so much for me, man. It's beautiful, I guess, for that to be recognized because it is such an important thing to be able to hold space for people. But
Yeah.
it's also so important to be reflective. And you know what? We are never always going to get it right. You know, there's
No.
so many times where we'll get it wrong. And that wrong might only be wrong for a particular person, right? Because for another person, it might not be the same outcome.
Yeah.
But I think being able to reflect and have that humility that you just showed in what you're doing with this podcast, it's you're giving people a voice. And speaking from, just my own experience, being able to share your vulnerable voice working through trauma has so much value to it.
Mm, totally. Absolutely. But, that was massive for me. Yeah, it was huge. So my light's just turned off at the side. So it's on a timer for 11:15, so I need to turn it back on. Um, yeah, I just it was massive for me, man, and I'll never forget it. And what a lesson for me to go forward on as well. When somebody comes to me, yeah, I just remembered how powerful it felt. I don't even need to remember. It just felt powerful, and you didn't come the next day and go, I need to talk to you about my stuff, right? It was just authentic. It was natural when we got together again and you went into it. I was like, and it just took me back to my phone call, Anyway, yeah. So I appreciate that, man. And thank you for sharing. Thank you to you for being vulnerable on this and helping me fulfill my journey in wanting to get those stories out there. You didn't have to do it. Most probably wouldn't. But you and the others who have done it so far and the ones I'm doing later in the next few weeks, I'm very grateful for you guys, because if you guys weren't willing to do this, this wouldn't exist. So Paul, man, thank you so much. And we look forward to, I know I will look forward to, and I'm sure everybody else, with the journey you're going on. I'm sad that you're, well, can you say what you're doing next?
Yeah. So I'm moving overseas at the end of April. Starting off in Thailand.
So you'll already be there, because this will be not out till after that. So you're already there.
Yeah. But let's take a moment and just thank you so much for having me.
Easy, of course. It was.
And, there's that friend part where I'm just so proud, to be your friend and to witness all it is that you're doing. It's such a powerful thing. Please never underestimate how powerful it is giving people a voice.
Yeah, sometimes I second guess myself even doing this, but I'm just going to continue to do it because it makes me happy. Even if no one watches, it makes me happy. So, Paul, thank you, my friend. I'm sad that you're leaving, but I'm sure I will see you before you go. We'll have to make it happen, and I hope you come back to Australia. And if I have to drag you here myself, I will do. Back to my area, because you should never have left. But everyone else, thank you, and I hope you've got something from this today. I'm no doubt in my mind you will have. Until next time, to our next guest, you take care, Paul, and everybody else. Thank you for watching Leading Our Own Way. And Paul, continue leading your own way, my friend.
Thank you, Andrew.
Have a good night,
It's been a
everyone.
pleasure. We'll see you
Yes,
later.
Paul, thank you, mate.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening and watching Leading Our Own Way. So we can stay together forever and share more incredible journeys, please subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss next week's episode and what that amazing guest has to offer to the world. Please support Leading Our Own Way, and we'll get you on next week's episode.